In personnel selection, we recognize that when we are conducting a selection interview, it's possible, albeit unintentionally, for raters, error, or biases to creep into our overall assessment of an applicant. As recruitment professionals, we want to ensure that the process that we use in selecting an applicant is as fair and unbiased as possible. To accomplish this, it's important that we recognize that a number of different types of rater errors exist. So perhaps the most common rater error is referred to as halo. And this is when we learn something positive about someone. It has a tendency to influence any subsequent information we learn about that particular applicant. The opposite of this is called horn. And this is when we learn something negative about someone. That information too is used in a way that affects our future assessment of other information about that person. Contrast effect is also another common error that exists in selection interviews. Contrast happens when we use relative rather than absolute assessments of applicants. That is, we look at comparing somebody to their previous applicant rather than any kind of performance standards. Similar to me is when we rate people who are like us much higher simply based on those similarities rather than on any performance criteria. Another error that can occur is central tendency, and this is when we rate everybody as average rather than using a full range of performance criteria to assess the applicant during the course of the interview. The final error that can take place is based on appearance. And this is based on a theory called what is good is beautiful. And this is simply, in our culture, we are taught that people who are attractive, are smart, are more successful than people who are less attractive. As a result, if possible, to rate people higher based simply on their level of attractiveness rather than on their qualifications for the position. So the question is, what can we do as recruitment professionals to ensure that our selection interviews are as unbiased and fair as possible? Well, first, and perhaps most importantly, simply being aware that these types of errors exist will greatly enhance the likelihood that they will not affect the outcome of the interview. So before rating a candidate, I would recommend that you ask yourself these 4 questions. First, am I rating the candidate based on the reviewer criteria provided for this position, or am I rating them based on a previous applicant that I have seen? Second, am I rating this applicant as average because they are truly average or because I'm not using all of the rating dimensions available for this particular position? Third, am I rating this candidate as highly because they are similar to me or because they truly have qualifications for this position? And finally, am I rating this candidate highly because I think that they are attractive? If you ask yourself these 4 questions before you conduct your interviews, you will significantly reduce the likelihood that they will affect your overall assessment.